Hello, every pony. I'm sorry I've been gone for a few days. I've been taking full advantage of my weekend so far. What with, staying up late and making merry and enjoying the festivities of festiveness. Anyway. So we are back and ready for Chapter 3 of Angelswift. When we last left our hero, he was being tormented by the most ridiculously horrendous Mrs. Cake impression you have ever heard. And there'll be more of that in here. So, let's just get started, shall we? And I think, because I feel bad for not uploading for a few days, I might throw in a quick one-chapter story after this. Because I've been thinking about doing this one for a while now, so I suppose I'll go ahead and do it. Anyway. By the time Lance and Cherry had left Sugar Cube Corner, it was nighttime. They had stayed and enjoyed the party, as well as helped themselves to a few extra cupcakes. Cherry had fallen asleep towards the end, and Lance decided it was time to go home. She was now resting on her brother's back as the ivory pony made their long walk home. Lance looked up towards the moon, enjoying the night's air. He could see Canterlot far away, lit brightly against the dark shadow of the mountains. One day, we'll be living up there. Lance still didn't have a job, though. He had asked Cheerily if the school needed a caretaker or anything, but stated that the school didn't need any pony like that. He had also asked the Cakes if there was a job available at Sugar Cube Corner, but again he was turned down. Getting a job was going to be harder than he thought. But at least next week Cherry will be starting school. Unfortunately, Lance had to get her some school supplies, which meant more money. The good mood that Lance had been in faded quickly. Everything depended on him. Food, living, supplying. Tomorrow he'd have to search every place in Ponyville looking for a job. Maybe the market will have something. They're all farmers, right? Lance thought to himself. Surely there must be some pony willing to take on an extra pair of hooves. Lance had a plan for tomorrow. Before he realized that he was on the dirt path that led to their home. The path was still overrun with weeds, and being outside the edge of town, no pony seemed to dare come here. He thought back to the party and every pony's reaction to when he told them all where they were living. And flashback. And a sip of my drink. Beveragey. Okay, anyway, flashback. Flashback noise. Cherry Blossom was rolling a ball on the floor towards the two foals. First to Pound Cake, who would bounce it back, if not a little too hard, and then after Cherry would get the ball back, she rolled it to Pumpkin Cake, who would immediately pick the ball up and begin sucking on it. Mr. Cake was always there, though, to take the ball from her and help her to roll it back to Cherry. "They look like they're having so much fun, don't they?" Mrs. Cake had said to Lance. They had been talking about it about if he could get a job working at Sugar Cube Corner before she had gently let him down. "Well, Cherry's never really... yeah. Yeah, they do." Lance almost said something that would have brought up too many questions. Cherry's never had friends before, being kept inside a house working day and night. He was glad that that part of her life was over, and he'd never see her like that again. Lance took a quick sip of the fruit punch he had on the table next to him. The song on the record player just changed to something a lot more lively, and Lance heard Pinky say something about jam before bouncing to the dance area she'd set up. "So tell me, dearie," said Mrs. Cake, getting Lance's attention again, "where exactly in Ponyville are you staying?" Lance knew some pony would ask this eventually. Maybe he could just sugarcoat it and not exactly say what the place was like. "Well, it's just a little place outside of town. Nothing special, it's just on the edge of the forest." "Needle scratch." Every pony had stopped where they stood. All conversation went quiet, followed up by whispers. Lance couldn't help but notice all eyes were on him. Mrs. Cake shakily touched a hoof to Lance's shoulder. "Dearie, surely you don't mean the old house by the Everfree Forest, do you?" Mrs. Cake sounded a little worried. Just then the Cake's foals began crying loudly. Mr. Cake picked them both up, saying he was taking them to bed. Lance looked back to Mrs. Cake. Look, I know that the house is currently in a state of disrepair, but as soon as I can find a job... Mrs. Cake cut Lance off. Dearie, it isn't the house we're worried about, it's the forest. Wait, what? Lance asked, confused. Just then, a unicorn with a mint-green coat and the same color mane with a white stripe stood forward. That forest isn't safe, the mint unicorn said. Then another pony that was next to her stepped forward. She had a cream-colored coat and a blue and pink curly mane. All kinds of monsters live in there. Then suddenly, each pony at the party was stepping forward one after the other. The forest is hexed, haunted, evil, and spooky. Pinky appeared behind Lance. You can't stay there. Every pony that's lived there has mysteriously disappeared. They say the house is like an evil monster that welcomes you in, and then when you fall asleep, wham! It'll trap you inside and crawl away and spit you out into the heart of the forest, where the wicked enchantress of the forest will take your soul and use it to put on a puppet show. And the only guests are the monsters of the forest. Suddenly, there was the sound of crying, and every pony looked to the source. Cherry Blossom was running across the floor and jumped into her brother, holding him tight while she cried her heart out. She was terrified. Lance looked at Pinky with a scowl on his face. Look what you've done. Lance gave a nasty look to every pony in the store. You should all be ashamed of yourselves, making up ridiculous ghost stories, let alone believing them. Lance then held the filly tightly to himself. I don't want to go back there, Cherry spoke between sobs. It's okay, Lance whispered to the little pink filly. You've really got nothing to worry about. Every pony in the room hung their heads in shame. Their fear, paranoia, and overreacting had just terrified a little filly. Pinky stood frozen. She, worse than any pony else, with her overactive imagination, had perhaps caused the most damage. Mrs. Cake walked around to Cherry Blossom and got down low to Cherry's eye level and began speaking in a very gentle voice. It's all right, dearie. There's really nothing to be scared of. Cherry's crying had quieted it down. The mint-green mare then stepped closer. Yeah, we're sorry. It was just a bad joke. Each pony murmured in agreement. One by one, the ponies came forward and began saying they were sorry both to Cherry and to Lance. All but one pony. Pinky had disappeared. Flashback over. It had been a really rough end to an otherwise good day. Cherry had fallen asleep shortly after the trouble with the ghost stories. When Mrs. Cake had saw Cherry was asleep, she leaned in close to Lance. I'm sorry about all that, dearie, but I'm serious when I say stay out of the forest, she had told him, and if you do ever have to go in, don't leave the path for any reason. Lance had wanted to argue again about the ghost story nonsense, but stopped himself when he saw the serious expression on her face. They were close to their home now. Lance could see the candlelight in the window. Candlelight? We never lit a candle before leaving, Lance thought to himself. Cherry, wake up. Cherry Blossom was still on his back. She looked at him with her eyes half closed. I need to get down for a minute. She looked puzzled as he knelt closer to the ground for her. Why? What's wrong? Cherry noticed the worried expression on her brother's face. Lance looked back to the house. Father wouldn't have tracked us down, would he? Lance thought to himself. Oh, Celestia, how could I have been so foolish? Of course he'd think to come here first. What was he going to do? He couldn't fight him. His father was twice his size. Lance looked down to his sister. Cherry, I need you to promise me you'll stay here. What? But... Lance cut her off. Promise me. Cherry heard the worry in Lance's voice. She knew something was wrong when she looked over to the house. Cherry nodded as she stepped away from her brother. Lance slowly made his way to the front door and noticed it was slightly ajar. Lance peeked in and saw no pony in the immediate hallway. He pushed the door open without a sound and then stepped inside. The kitchen was to his left, living room to the right. Further down the hall on the left was the bathroom and the bedroom on the right. Lance stepped into the kitchen first. There was a bunch of candles lighting up the whole kitchen, and Lance saw the watering can right in front of him. This would have to do if he was forced to defend himself. He knew there was nothing else in the house, so he headed toward the living room across the hall. A floorboard creaked as he stepped into the hall. It echoed throughout the house, and suddenly everything instantly became quieter. It was already silent, but the sudden noise made it feel like the world had stopped moving altogether. Not a sound could be heard inside or outside. Lance thought he saw a darker shadow coming from down the hall, to the right. He's in the bedroom. Lance stated himself, creeping down the hall as silently as he could. The door was only slightly open, and he could see the light of the candle flickering and coming through the crack of the door. He'd have to open the door quickly. Almost 24 hours later, and it seemed he was in the same situation as last time, back at his home in Las Pegasus. Only this time, Cherry was safe outside. But was her father perhaps waiting for them? Just waiting for the door to open before jumping out? Taking a deep breath, he decided to just bull rush in. With the watering can held in his mouth, Lance quickly charged forwards into the room, knocking the door open with a loud bang. Lance looked around the room quickly, seeing only the bed and 2 candles on the windowsill lighting the room. He saw no other pony there. Lance hesitated as he put down the watering can to check under the bed. Nothing. Lance stood up and turned around. Something then suddenly dropped from the ceiling, hanging upside down. Surprise! Excuse me. Lance screamed with shock as he jumped backwards from the intruder, and he tripped over the watering can. He landed hard on his flank as he heard giggling. He looked up and saw Pinkie Pie drop from the ceiling. What? Pinkie? Lance regained his composure as he stood up. So what do you think? Is it nice? Do you like it? Pinkie was bouncing up and down on the spot. What's going on? What's with all these candles? What are you doing here in my home? Oh, well, you see, at first I was all sad because I'd made you mad for making Cherry sad, so I thought that the best way to turn those frowns upside down was to make the creepy house into a super magnificent, amazing, wondrous, fantastic house. Lance looked around the room properly this time and saw that the bed had been completely cleaned off, and the sheets had been replaced along with the blankets and pillows. The floors had been dusted and washed, as well as the walls. Pinkie, did you do all of this? Lance asked, stunned. Yep, I did every room from top to bottom, Pinkie said with a proud smile. But how? You've only been gone from the party for like an hour. Silly. You think I gave away a Pinkie secret? Pinkie giggled as Lance walked out into the hallway to check the other rooms. The bathroom was spotless. The kitchen sparkled. The living room was completely devoid of dust and cobwebs now. Lance even saw that all the letters had been stacked into 3 piles, and another small, tiny pile of pink letters sat to the side. Those are just my old party invitations. I was just going to read them for next time. I think I should just hoof deliver them myself. That way I can see all my friends more, and no pony will ever have to worry about missing out on a Pinkie Pie party. Lance looked at the other letters. They were all in order. Not just by how close the houses were, but each pile represented dates of how old the letters were. The 3rd pile was a mess, but it was all junk mail that was completely worth tossing outside into the garbage. Just then, Lance remembered something as he looked out the window. Cherry! Lance then rushed to the door and looked outside to where he left his sister. But she was gone. And that's the end of Chapter 3. So, again with the cliffhangers. I know how much you love those. Okay, so that's now complete, and I will start uploading it. And then I think I will go ahead and record something else quick and enjoyable and entertaining for you guys. And then I will call it a night because I need to get a shower and get some sleep and get ready for work tomorrow. So, yes. Anyway, so thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.